Member Thornhill.
Speaker, what a tough act to follow with my colleague with those brilliant words in accountability for this government. But it has been nearly, or actually it's been a month. It's been a month that this House of Commons remains at a standstill, and the Prime Minister and these NDP-Liberals will stop at nothing to throw sand in the gears of Parliament in a blatant attempt to cover up their costly corruption. These documents are still missing. The taxpayer money is still gone. The dirty deeds still go unpunished. It's been more than a month. And when you look at the numbers, it's astounding. $400 million vanished. 186 conflicts of interest, one government in contempt of Parliament. They refuse to hand over the evidence to the RCMP, and that's exactly why we are here. They don't want Canadians to know who got the money and how. They don't want Canadians to know how badly they've mismanaged this boondoggle. They don't want the RCMP to start sniffing around on what's actually going on. That just tells us that whatever is in those documents must be really, really bad. It must be more than your usual garden variety Liberal corruption. If you shut down Parliament for a month, there must be something brutal in those documents. And I think Canadians have a right to know. That's why we're still here. Day in and day out, parties in this House are demanding that the Liberals do their basic duty and provide transparency that Canadians deserve and, frankly, the Speaker demanded. And while they stand up claiming that government is working in the best interest of Canadians, as that's what their objective is, it's a bit rich from a party that has now stopped this place from operating for a month. The paper trail must be so long and lead all the way to the top. That's the only conclusion to draw from why they've stopped this place from working for a month. Nearly 10 years ago, the Prime Minister pledged that he would lead, quote, the most transparent and open government in the world. Those were his words. 10 years later, it's easy to see just how far they've fallen. And his caucus are now set to do, or are now forced to do the dirty work to cover up yet another scandal from this government. If stonewalling documents about corruption for months on end is the behavior of the world's most transparent government, then I'd hate to see what happens in the world's least transparent government. If the Prime Minister wanted to make the promise about transparency, then maybe he should have said that he would lead the most transparently corrupt and incompetent government. That would be a promise that he can certainly brag about keeping. That would result in us not having to be here certainly for a month, arguing with them about their basic duty to turn over the documents to the cops. But Conservatives have a plan, and they have a plan on keeping a promise too. And that's our promise to hold this government accountable for every bad decision that they make, for every grifter that gets rich off of Canadian tax dollars, and for every ethical lapse in judgment from this Prime Minister and the cabal of Liberals that have been a problem in that respect. And every conflict of interest, that is the duty of the opposition, and that is one that we take seriously, and that is one that we will argue here in this place for as long as it takes for these guys to actually be accountable to Canadians. We won't let up until we make sure that Canadians have the answer and that this doesn't happen again. But now it seems that with the culture of corruption, with the Liberal and the NDP parties, they've transferred over to another party. It seems like the Bloc wants in on the action too. They're offering the Prime Minister a secret deal to let him off the hook for this corruption and incompetence in order to serve the Bloc's narrow interest, a deal with the devil, so to speak, between them and the federal government to see all the corruption swept under the rug until the next scandal. And we know there will be another one. And to get a firmer grip on power and play politics with the rights and the privileges and the obligations of this place. When Canadians look at this Parliament, they see Liberals and Conservatives and NDP and Bloc and Green Party members. But now it's clear that there are over 5 parties in this place, Madam Speaker, who actually sit here, but there are really only 2 parties. One mega party that supports the Prime Minister and his agenda, blindly voting to declare, continued unaccountability to the Canadian people. But more than that, unfettered confidence in his leadership. And only one party that is really standing up for Canadians. But after 9 years of this Prime Minister, Madam Speaker, the most devoted Liberals are realizing that the Prime Minister's corruption and incompetence are just too much to handle. At least 24 of them, at least 24 that we know of, have finally seen the light, demanding a change. Because the writing is on the wall. They feel it in their own constituencies with people that used to be excited to see them. They are fed up with everything that this Prime Minister has become, everything that he has become that he said that he wouldn't do. They see record-high inflation and home prices. They see out-of-control government spending. They just see how out of reach life has become in Canada. They, like all of us, like almost every Canadian, have lost confidence in this Prime Minister. And really, Mr. Speaker, who can blame them? It's now evident that they'll do anything to stay in power. Even a humiliating U-turn that we saw last week on immigration when they set these sky-high targets and then had to reverse themselves. Even throwing around unfounded conspiratorial accusations like you just heard from questioning right before me, the Leader of the Opposition and foreign governments. The tinfoil hats over there must be real tight. Even turning the trite and frankly ridiculous fear-mongering about individual rights, things like abortion in this country that every Canadian now sees through. It's the same old strategy, Madam Speaker. Divide and conquer. Divide this country into smaller and smaller pieces so it's easier to keep a grip on power and make sure that everybody forgets how miserable this Prime Minister has made their life. Canadians are tired of this. They're tired of the division, and they're tired of being labeled as some kind of other. They're tired of being told that north is south and up is down and wrong is right. And certainly they are tired of a government that cares more about itself than Canadians. That's what this whole saga is about. It's not just Canadians. It's not just the Prime Minister who's not in it for Canadians. He's in it for himself and for his friends. As long as he has to cling to the job for a bit longer, to ship some more money off to Liberal insiders, he'll do whatever it takes to stay in power, and they will do whatever it takes to argue in this place, not to do their duty and hand over the documents to the RCMP like the Speaker ordered them to. Look at everything happening outside of this place. Violent crime is up 30%. Crimes with firearms have doubled in this country since the Prime Minister came to power. Legal drugs on our streets, loved ones who can't get the help that they need. Car theft in my home region of York Region is up 300% in just 3 years. And there are members of the Liberal caucus who are celebrating an hourly drop in auto theft patterns, and they're patting themselves on the back for it. You don't need to celebrate a 20% decrease in auto theft when it increased 300% under your watch. That's not success. It is a victory lap on failure. And that is exactly what they are doing. The average home price in that same region is $1.3 million, a runaway deficit spending from a finance minister who still misses her targets. Canadians already struggling to make ends meet and afford a place to live are staring down the barrel of even more tax hikes and price increases. And we see it day after day, month after month, year after year, after 9 years of these guys. What we just found out is platforms like Spotify are raising subscription fees. The finance minister already told everybody in this House and every Canadian that she would cut Disney Plus, and I guess she's going to have to tell them to cut Spotify too. That's the latest of the tone-deaf, condescending suggestions from a finance minister who has somebody else pulling the strings at her own department. That's not to mention the serious allegation of election interference from foreign states and the Prime Minister's dangerous complicity in it, or the instability and the insanity happening on the other side of the world in the Middle East, or the out-of-control anti-Semitism on our streets. And we can't talk about any of that in this place. We can't fix any of those things because the government is focused on running out the clock while they try to cover up for their own mismanagement, their own scandal-ridden government. That's what this debate is about. It's about making sure that we no longer let this Prime Minister use his office as a platform to enrich his friends and his own self-interest at the taxpayer expense. There's an easy fix to all of this, and it can happen in mere minutes. The government just needs to release the documents. Give them to the cops. All of them. That's all. We can put this to bed today. Not at a committee, not in its redacted form, just the full documents. If they truly had nothing to hide, then they shouldn't be scared of anything. They certainly shouldn't be scared of turning those documents over. There's no reason why that release cannot happen except for this own government's own obstinance in this place. And you can tell by the arguments that they're making that they are desperate to avoid accountability, blathering on about their endless nonsense about the Charter, which they have used to trample on the rights of Canadians when it suits them, blathering on about committees so that it dies, this issue dies a slow death under the guise of transparency, and so on and so on. Madam Speaker, I will say this. The Charter was created to protect Canadians from their government. It was not created to protect this government from Canadians, this government from accountability, these Liberals from the people that actually voted them in here. And equally, if there are allegations and there is wrongdoing, you don't call a committee. You call the RCMP, the people with the power to prosecute the corruption and get Canadians their money back. Get every single Canadian their taxpayers, and get every single Canadian the accountability to see what their government is doing with their money. That is the least that they can do in this place now after a month of arguing this motion. That's what's come after 9 years of this Liberal government. We need the Mounties to now come in and sort things out, because the Prime Minister is obviously not able to sort things out by himself, or that more likely that he's covering up something. He's out of his depth on this in every single way. Like when it comes to representing Canada on the world stage, he allows the nation to be humiliated and embarrassed time and time and again, whether it's a stirring rendition of Bohemian Rhapsody or allowing our country to become a playground for hostile foreign governments, or when it comes to managing our economy. It's a shocker. It is a shocker that the guy who says that the economy grows out from the heart believes that the budget will balance itself and doesn't think about monetary policy and couldn't grow the economy, balance the budget, control inflation rates or interest rates in any way, not just for this generation, but for generations to come. Or even when it comes to just doing basic things. His government couldn't even make a simple app work. It took them months. And they sent 10,000 people inadvertently, unjustified, to a quarantine. That app should have never existed, didn't need it. It could have been built in a weekend if we needed it at all. And certainly there's corruption in that case itself. And it is no wonder that his caucus and his party are revolting against the Prime Minister. Even in former fortresses like downtown Montreal and downtown Toronto, where they've just repudiated 9 years of this Prime Minister by electing members from other parties. But one thing the Prime Minister excels at, and we should give him some credit, he excels at shipping off other people's money to line the pockets of Liberal insiders. Pet projects, money to massive corporations, while Canadians go hungry and lose sight of the country that we all once knew and loved. $12 million to Loblaws, $26 million to Costco, over $100 million to McKinsey, $107 million to GC Strategy. That's the two-person company that's run out of a basement in Ottawa. $900 million to the Wheat Charity, $50 million to MasterCard, billions of dollars of bloated bureaucracies like to Bombardier, and of course to the CBC. And no one can forgive or forget the $100 million that the government has shipped to UNRWA, an agency founded to employ terrorists and participated in the October 7th massacre, and is now trying to argue that it is legally immune from being responsible in doing so. And again, while Canadians go dumpster diving, because they can't afford the price of food. Mr. Speaker, we will put an end to all of this. We will put an end to the corporate welfare that lines the pockets of Liberal insiders doing nothing to create jobs or prosperity in this country. We will immediately stop funding UNRWA and start funding our own NATO allies instead. And we will, of course, defund the CBC. They're like without question. But on maybe the CBC first. Simply put, we will give Canadians back control of their money, of their wallets, of their lives, something that this government has refused to do time and time again. It is why we are here after almost a month of arguing why this government will not turn over documents that you yourself, Mr. Speaker, have told them to turn over, why they will cower from accountability for the people, for their taxpayers to know where their money went, who it enriched, what's in those documents. Mr. Speaker, if they had nothing to hide, they would turn these documents over today. They would turn them over today, and we can end this, and we can get back to Parliament and fix the things that they have broken in this country after 9 years. Cut taxes, build homes, fix the budget, stop crime. There is any number of issues that they have screwed up over 9 years, and we can get back to business if they just turned over those documents to the RCMP exactly like you told them to.
We're going to take a break from this question of privilege to move on to statements by members as well as to question period. The honourable member will have 3 minutes and 25 seconds left to continue her,
honourable member
intervention.
From Thornhill has
3 minutes and 25 seconds left in her speech. The honourable member.
It's been a month that this House has been at a complete standstill, paralyzed in the business of looking out for Canadians, of actually solving the problems that this House should be seized with. On one hand, it's not the worst news in the world, certainly for many who want to see this government take a walk after 9 years, hopefully in a soon-to-come carbon tax election where Canadians can decide to send them packing finally. On one hand, it may not be the worst thing, because it is the government's, after 9 years of this government and its destructive policies, we've been at a standstill for maybe just a brief while, where the government of the day, where the Liberals and their NDP counterparts can no longer, or at least in the short term, ruin the lives of Canadians even more than they have. This is a government that has doubled the cost of housing. They have doubled the cost of rent in 9 years. They have doubled a mortgage payment in this country over the course of the last 9 years. Inflation, interest rates, burning out of control because of this government's irresponsible spending. Mr. Speaker, we do not have a revenue problem in this country. We have a spending problem in this country, and it is that government that spends more than it has on things that we don't want and that we don't need. More than that, there are 2 million people eating in a food bank in a single month. Hundreds of tent cities popping up in Toronto and all across the country from coast to coast to coast. Crime, drugs, chaos, disorder in our streets, violent offenders turned out on bail as soon as they commit a crime. We saw this weekend in Toronto a scene from what seemed to be a movie. Police chasing down criminals who have stolen a car, who hurt a police horse, who put citizens shopping on a weekend in jail, who ruined a business, all to find out that these culprits were out on bail because of the government's weak on bail policy. And the Justice Minister today told this House that he's not responsible for any of it. that he is not responsible for Bill C-75, which allows that to happen. He also can't count, trying to make slogans using 3 words, 4 words. I don't know what that answer was, Mr. Speaker, but the issue is that the Justice Minister in this country does not think he is responsible for the justice system. And it is on this motion, we could be speaking about anything else in the House, but it's because this government won't turn the documents over to the police that we are here debating this, and we will continue to do that until they hand them over.
Question